Alright, I'm going to try and pick apart a couple little pieces of things and make a bit of a tutorial out of some of the work I was doing for the Boba Fett, Book of Boba Fett extra, whatever the closing credits that I'd been working on. The way in which it plays out in sort of the main context of the composition, I'll show you here. I'm using multiple layers. Where they fade in, fade out, and they sort of channel split your RGB layers as they fade in and fade out, coming into focus. And as the code sort of breaks apart, they lose focus, unwrite themselves, and disappear. So the concept of this was something I had essentially been thinking in trying to recreate a rangefinder HUD kind of display that would decode information or alien information. It's an app that had been developed for auto-translating text from other languages. So the idea of being able to have something that starts off as sort of code, other language kind of feeling in its look, and then have that become something that over time writes itself out, right? There it is without all of the other channel effects happening. Right, it plays itself out over the course of those few seconds, right? The timing of this, after I had sort of come up with the idea of the concept, execution came down to how to do this. I'd worked out the methodology for this previously, doing things like this in Flash, but now technology has sort of shifted, and I'm having to just apply the same kind of ideas to what I'm doing. So I had to break down my film, the segments of credits, into each portion of, so that they were essentially nested videos within a video or nested clips within a clip, allowing each segment of the director credits, writing credits, cast credits be controllable portions of the narrative as it plays itself out. So then coming into here, I'm able to sort of look at this just as this pure portion of this. So I have my text broken down into two little portions. One is the directed by, and then the other is the actual director credits, and just as two text layers. In After Effects, it sort of works this way, so I'm just going to, assume that you want to know about After Effects, or you're interested in sort of just the overall concept, and you don't mind that this is sort of, some of these things apply sort of more After Effects specific. But in After Effects, bringing this stuff together, it's essentially just understanding how the expressions work and how to connect them together. So I have sort of fade in, fade out timing points on some of the sort of action on when we want to start and finish the action of the typing. I'm going to bring it into this text layer here and come right down to the start of all of this. What we have is an expression in here that's pulled out of JavaScript. Let's go back to this tool for a second. Where are we? Okay, So, in trying to explain how this this fits together, we've got an expression which is utilizing JavaScript as its sort of controller. And so in implementing this, I'm just going to try and break it down. We need to connect it to two things that will be able to control two elements of it. So we've just created two sliders and connected them with the content so that each one has a corresponding, see how they highlight as I do this. So this is my posterized time and this is the character offset percentage. Now, they're very technical sort of ways of saying it, but we've got a control for time and how much we're getting offset in time by putting them together. And if we look at what our actual idea is within the context of the code, you can see that we're posterizing time. So we're creating a way to control time, how quickly something is happening. Then we're giving a probability, a chance for an effect to happen, which is the character being offset, and using the slider to control this, right? That's this little piece here. Then we're going to create a variable that changes characters. I added some of these to what had been a piece of code that I had found that was out there that did this sort of something like this, and by utilizing it, modifying it in a manner to suit my purposes, I was able to resolve these. I can get more into sort of searching and finding things to work with, and how to evolve them into where you're trying to go to if you're really unfamiliar with JavaScript or coding in general, or if you want to start from scratch with things and conceptualize things. That's, I think, a different conversation. This is more about trying to piece things together, having an idea, a sense of something, and being able to find the quickest methodology to getting you there, and understanding the methodology you're using. So if you didn't understand how to use JavaScript, you shouldn't just be grabbing something and pasting it in place and saying, oh, you know this now. Better to understand what it is that you're working with, experiment with it, and evolve it. So in this case, what I wanted was something that allowed me to create characters that could be put in place and have them have a probability of how often they come in and split the line and move the line forward. So as we're typing in, we put characters that randomize themselves until they settle in on being their final state, and then eventually fall back into. So there is this arc in and out of state. So this variable now requires a text line to cause a split, and then we continue through. Right? We have a full length, a total amount. We're breaking down our variable and giving options for the variable to permutate. Following through the final content, you'll see that all of this works within, loops, and brings back our content. So whatever is our actual text layer will play itself out. It'll try and write itself out and use these other character permutations as replacements for the letters until they've fully typed themselves out. Once they do, they'll stay for length of time and then unwrite themselves as they finish. And we need to trigger this action by setting up where is the start point for it to come in and where does it start to go out. And if we let that all play out, here we are. You actually go frame by frame in here. We see it starts to use the permutations and write out a line of text. And as it finishes that line, it starts to work on the next line, and the amount that the previous line has resolved itself is still happening, and the amount the time that it takes for this to resolve is the midpoint, let's say, or the zenith of the arc of this action, which is about here, but actually the key point for all of it is this trigger here, or this key frame. And then from here, we're devolving back towards out, staying for a little longer in and taking a little longer to go out, because the concept of the flow of arc action, inertia and loss of inertia, it exists in nature in all kinds of different places, but especially with the idea that we're trying to go into focus and out of focus in the other elements, we want it to linger a little bit before things sort of break apart. We're hoping for our decoder to have captured the information long enough for us to read it all before it disappears, because it's trying to break into the crypto whatever, and it gives it this, only functional for so long, temporariness of the information. Temporal access, if that's a way we can phrase that. And then taking this and bringing it together with the rest of the film was a matter of being able to find a way to cause that text layer to force that sense of split. Now, I've seen some very expensive plugins and add-ons and stuff for After Effects that work really great, and they're worthwhile to make the investments in if you can afford it, if your budget allows, or if you're working on somebody else's production. But for me, I have to be very economical in what I'm doing with this. So I created this layer by layer. So I have in my supporting credits a ghost layer, which we'll call layer 4 or 5 of this, and I've got a guide layer, which is my my fundamental, or my base frame. Right. See if I can knock out some more of these. All right. So in this, my guide layer is just my base layer that rides itself out. Then I have a blue cast version, and the distortion that's happening on each of these layers is controlled by a channel shift and an optics compensation that basically allows you to compensate for the distortion that the camera creates around the outer edges, the lens distortion, when bringing in footage, so that you can add effects to it in different ways. You can also reverse engineer this little piece to create the distortion that lenses make. So by doing so, the idea of the lens actually causing the shift, distortion, growth, and shrinking of, in a lens-like manner, of the information, and then taking that and layering it up with the green and red channels to achieve a similar effect, but having their arc be ever so slightly different as the channels attempt to phase into focus together. Is the idea of a channel split really most effective at imitating. Let's go with this. Pre-rendered this segment, so we're not fighting so hard with it. And the one thing that really felt like it needed I needed just a little more oomph in pulling it together. Was that sense of build of the information, right? All the channels, when they come together, there's an extra layer of saturation. Sometimes there's a bleeding out of that saturation, a haze, right? We often refer to it in Photoshop and stuff like that by the tool, the feathering effect of this, but that hazy glow corona effect was the thing that I really wanted to capture in the oversaturation of, as elements sort of came together and left. How could I capture the essence of that too much for the camera lens kind of element in the heat of the desert, where the setting is for the majority of this? It feels like there's too much light. It's too bright, and so I wanted to find a way to capture that in this. All right, give it that feeling that once it's really there, almost burns the eyes to look at it for too long, which is part of why the credits have to fade out or damage the lens that's observing from whatever distance, right? It's like a safety protocol coming into effect saying, okay, the machine's getting too hot, and then it shuts down. So you're kind of fighting with that. And there it is, all those layers coming together, and then in the final context with the rest of the film and the music, timing, letting it pull in and pull out, camera left, camera right, top, bottom, and let that position of where the text is cause the feeling of distortion and the feeling of connectedness as we pull in and out of sharing the powers that were the creative forces that pulled this project together and brought it into focus for us. I hope you enjoy this little breakdown, and I'll be jumping into other little sections of the film as I move through. As always, thanks much for checking it out, and I'll be back with more next time.